Over 4 million Italians entered the United States by the early part of the 20th century. Each arrived eager, perhaps nervous, to start a new life or to escape an old one. My great-grandfather, in this sense, was no different than the rest. His name was Victor Cardona. His story is a very human one, years in the making of a family struggling to survive and maintain its deep-rooted legacy of Italian tradition. Victor decided to leave Sulmona, his home in southern Italy. Sulmona was a place where young men had no hope for employment and where overpopulation and currency devaluation created dark prospects for the future. Travel by sea to the States was cheap enough that even Victor could afford it. He was determined to make something of himself and, like so many others, saw the United States as one of the only real avenues to do so. Encouraged by the Italian government, in February of 1921, he took to the sea aboard the Providence, a French ship that offered Mediterranean to New York service. On February 9th, Victor arrived at Ellis Island. His new life had suddenly begun. Victor was a late Italian immigrant, only a few years before restrictions, onset by anxieties about immigrants, would begin in full force. It was not an easy transition. In the 1920s, Italians were heavily discriminated against. They were considered outliers in American society and faced prejudice that led people, like Victor, to congregate within their own insular little Italies. Victor's early days were dark. He lived on the subway until finally finding work in New York City's Little Italy. While he made sacrifices, existing on the bare minimum, he saved up enough money through miscellaneous jobs and his work as a tailor to send back home so his younger brother, Augusto, could join him in New York. 8 years after his arrival, Victor naturalized. On March 4th of 1928, Victor Cardona was an American citizen. He did not lose his Italian roots despite the new life he had made for himself. He maintained his identity in the face of disdain for Italians and, in the following decade, the rise of fascism in Italy, which culminated in the United States' declaration of war against Italy in 1941. A traumatic moment for those, like Victor, who suddenly faced a war between their two homes. Nonetheless, Victor and Augusto left New York for Albany, opening a grocery. With the war now over, his Italianness was no longer a point of shame. The traditions of the old country were fervently kept alive. Victor made sausage for the store in the basement, sold special Italian items, spoke only Italian to his wife, and customarily closed the store for midday meal and nap like back home in Italy. Tradition was of the utmost importance to Victor, the legacy of which I still enjoy today. Despite his lack of education and his impoverished beginning, Victor was able to achieve success. All 5 of his children attended college. He was able to support himself while sending money back home. He balanced the hardships most immigrants face in struggling to find an identity they could proudly call their own. He balanced the hardships that most immigrants faced in struggling to find an identity they could proudly call their own. Despite the challenges of pervasive racism, discrimination, and the onset of World War II, Victor was able to proudly be an Italian American.